The backlog, a series of games that have been purchased only to sit in the wings and never get their time in the limelight. A sale on at the store, got to buy a game. Finding a second-hand physical copy of a game that you've never heard of, got to buy it. All of this whilst knowing I'm unlikely to ever play any of these games as there's always something new I want to get to. Or I have no spare time as a father who already works 2 jobs just to pay the damn mortgage. That is until now. I have placed the entirety of my backlog onto a randomizer wheel and I will be forced to play whatever it lands on. So let's get underway and see which will be the first step in our journey to clearing our backlog one spin at a time. So our first game is going to be Death's Door, which I recently picked up in a sale after enjoying other isometric style games like Bastion and Cocoon. With all games in the backlog series, I will initially go in blind and try to enjoy the game naturally before then looking at whether I want to go for the platinum trophy or to be a completionist. Death's Door premise is that you are a crow working as a reaper who needs to go and collect giant souls to turn in for payment at the Reaping Commission. Before going into our first piece of combat, we picked up our first additional weapon, which is the Umbrella, which does 0.5% damage and looks to be a pointless item. Oh, how wrong I was. We complete our first piece of combat only to be knocked out. Cracking start. We then enter the Lost Cemetery, the central area to this whole world. Combat is a huge part of this game, and my initial impressions are it flows pretty well, with an easy to use dodge mechanic and accurate hitboxes on enemies. All I will say is it's a little slow to begin with, but the upgrades are sure to help that in the future. The battle against the Guardian of the Door was our real first test, and in turn was the moment that I realised I was fully invested in this game. I lost health early on in the battle, and the intensity just ramped up and up until a point where I was being bombarded by every single attack at once. I risked it all to make one final blow. We meet the Great Crow at the most northern part of the Lost Cemetery, and he informs us of the lost soul that got away through Death's Door. To open the door, we need to collect 3 major souls and go inside to pursue the lost soul. Our first soul can be found in the Witch's Mansion. The start of this area has some simple puzzles, which means I will not be admitting to how long it took me to do this. Here we get our first opportunity to upgrade a skill using souls we have collected from defeating enemies. I chose to upgrade the dexterity first, which allows for quicker charges of ranged weapons and spells. We then meet our first companion, Pothead. He explains that he has some beef with the witch and wants to confront her and get her to reverse his Pothead spell. His head is literally full of soup. We did also get our first death in this area. Don't worry though, it won't be the last one. As expected with this genre of game, death was a common occurrence, with even some of the non-boss enemies causing me some issues. For example, this knight didn't just kill me once, but twice. And it was third time lucky that I eventually managed to beat what was a standard enemy. Now usually this sort of difficulty spike would put me off a game. Yes, that's right, I'm a filthy casual who likes to feel like he can take on the world when playing video games. I get slapped about and abused enough whilst adulting in the real world, thanks. Gaming is my escape. But in Death's Door, battles like this one felt really rewarding. Barely making it out alive, defeating an enemy with our final swing when we could have easily been killed at the same time, it made me persevere at several points throughout this playthrough. We acquired a new weapon in the rogue daggers for our troubles and finally entered the Witch's Mansion. We returned to the hub world to upgrade our strength stat, which means we now hit a little bit harder with our melee attack before then returning to the mansion. In each world there is a door that has 4 souls that need to be collected to unlock it, so we complete some simple puzzles, defeated a mini boss with a weirdly long tongue first time. By the way, forget everything I said earlier about me dying lots, I'm a pro, before freeing my first soul. We meet the witch for the first time, the first of 3 giant souls that we need to collect before unlocking Death's Door. Continuing through the mansion, we come across a similar set of enemies, Tongue Man plus minions this time, and I die. So maybe not as elite as I thought. It is at this point that I do actually have my first gripe with the game. My least favourite thing so far is when you fail at a boss, you then need to walk back through the whole section, which is often empty, to then give the boss another go. It feels as though it's a bit of a waste of time, really. I did beat the boss on the second attempt on this occasion, but believe me, later in this video I waste so much time running back to a boss after being defeated. Of course, by beating the boss we also unlock the second soul, meaning we only need 2 more to unlock the door at the centre of the mansion. I do struggle with being defeated in games. The feeling of failure cripples my already wounded self-esteem. However, I need to get used to it because Elden Ring is on the wheel, meaning we will play it eventually. We'll need to be at one with death by then. Like with most games, Death's Door also has collectibles, all of which are needed for many of the trophies in this game. We found our first one in the form of an old engagement ring with a rather amusing description. All the while the witch is still following us around the mansion, she's not too keen on our presence. The next soul was also a tricky one to beat. The game's difficulty has really ramped up at this point, which didn't feel the case in my second playthrough of the game, but more on that later. Once again, the trip back to this boss took an absolute age each time. Luckily, it only took 3 attempts. With the collection of this soul, we have officially unlocked the door at the centre of the mansion and can now access whatever may lie inside. The old witch really isn't happy now, time to take her on. The door opens, but it isn't the witch we face, instead we are faced with the Avarice, a chest that sucks us in and bombards us with waves of enemies to defeat. Whilst we only have 4 hits we can take. We beat this onslaught and we are awarded with the flame spell, arguably the best ability on the game, and would go on to be very useful for a trophy or 2. Now we can finally head to the basement and face the witch. She has captured Pothead and is apparently also his grandmother. Time to save the man with a head full of soup. Before we take Grandma Witch down, we have to conquer the most infuriating traversal part of this game so far. This area was impossible. Slight exaggeration. Firstly, the waves upon waves of enemies. Secondly, the pipes blocking your path repeatedly. Thirdly, the tight, cramped spaces. Finally, a man with what can only be described as a t-shirt cannon, which you can't dodge because of points 1, 2 and 3. Luckily, I wasn't stumped for too long with this one until I got cornered by a bunch of jumping poops. Oh, these bloody pipes. This area was the most I'd healed so far by an absolute mile, planting seeds and feeding from their fruit at every opportunity. I also found myself trying to run through areas as opposed to actually fighting the enemies. Not sure this is a positive, but it almost felt like it was meant to make you bypass the enemies to get to Pothead as soon as possible. We did eventually reach Grandma and it was time to battle. Here I did get my first trophy, and a missable one at that. Hot Pot for firing a spell into Grandma's cauldron when she lies down. Hard focusing on this trophy, however, did result in death. We then managed to beat Grandma and attended her funeral, which frankly made me think that we were potentially the bad guy here. The Lord of the Doors then applauded us for our work, which added to my suspicions. Chandler the Handler then told us that Grandma was the wrong soul, which all but confirmed that maybe we were in the wrong here, but it was still contributing to opening Death's Door, so I was certainly torn on whether I felt like we'd done the right thing or not. I took a little detour here as I was unsure where I was meant to be going. On my detour I managed to pick up a second trophy, Squid Soup, which was for meeting Jefferson and accepting his soup. It then took me nearly 30 minutes to work out where I was meant to go next. The lack of map/directional assistance made it a frustrating find, which I did look up online afterwards, and it seems that others have had this issue too. I was also concerned that I was 4 hours in and I'd only acquired 2 trophies, which worried me a little bit for a potential platinum pursuit later on. It didn't end up being too bad in the end, little hint to where this video might end, but I can't remember of many games in the past that have made you wait this long to get your first trophy. If you have any other suggestions for games that are like this, please put them in the comments down below. And whilst you're there, if you're enjoying this video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing for more backlog clearing content in the future. The next game we spin on the wheel is one I never thought I'd play. The next area was a swamp and had some cool new mechanics/enemies. Firstly, a bomb firing flower to help clear paths. Secondly, you could hit vines to help you reach higher places and traverse over gaps. and not to mention there were enemies that completely ignored my new fire spell. The premise of the story for this area was to help a tribe by collecting a horn that could then be used to wake the forest and unblock a path that was between us and our next soul. This area, all in all, caused me little difficulties, unlike the surrounding areas of the witch's mansion. We returned the horn with no trouble, spoke to the forest, and our path was unblocked. In the mushroom dungeon was the first time we came across the Frog King, who was my personal favourite giant soul in the game. We need to remember that when we do finally take him on, we have to do so in a particular way to get ourselves a missable trophy. Much like the witch's mansion, we needed 4 souls to open the locked door. It was a close shave here whilst collecting the first one, the second of which was much more straightforward, mind. The third soul room caused some issues with some particularly spongy enemies with armour on that didn't necessarily cause a threat but took ages to take down. We did get some really nice traversal puzzles in this area which I particularly enjoyed. One of my favourite ways to unlock a path in a video game is through puzzles like this. It always reminds me of mechanics found in like Spyro the Dragon or Tomb Raider. It's very satisfying when you finally crack it. I went on a little detour before looking for the 4th soul, finding myself a new weapon in the Thunder Hammer. This felt quite hidden away, so not to miss anything in the game, it is worth exploring. When we then went to take on the 4th soul to unlock our gate, we did struggle quite a bit, with many deaths like this one, and this one too. Another one for good measure. Why not chuck another death in there? Before finally obtaining the 4th soul. In my defence, I was playing in 33-degree heat, which if you're from England means you are essentially sitting in the pits of an active volcano, so it was like I was at one with these swamp creatures. We persevered and finally had collected our final soul to unlock the door. We entered the unlocked door and took on the next Avarice. We did take a couple of deaths as per usual before then defeating the onslaught and gaining access to the bomb spell. This ability allows us to break down barriers in the world, one of which freed Grunt. Remember him for later when we can collect ourselves a trophy. The bomb also unlocked a path to help us find our first shrine. The shrines in this game each provide a gem, green or red in colour, which when we collect enough permanently upgrades our amount of health or ranged attacks we can use. We also used our new ability to tick off some collectibles. With the Avarice completed, we can now enter the Frog King's domain. Before we can take on the Frog King himself, we are met with some new traversal puzzles, one of which resulted in another shrine. One thing worth shouting out about Death's Door is the humour in the writing, such as this clip. It is at this point that I'll try to show you a little less of Death's Door play-by-play experience, because I simply recommend you go and play this game for yourself. As it progresses, enemies become more varied, puzzles more complex, and each battle arena more satisfying to complete. I've decided this game is one I want to platinum. Now, this isn't going to be the case for every game we play in our backlog series, but Death's Door just felt like it had more to give. With that being said, it's finally time to enter the Frog King's lair. In this battle we managed to get the trophy Meal for a King for putting one of our newly acquired bombs in the frog's mouth. We defeat the Frog King, meaning we now have 2 out of 3 souls collected to open Death's Door. My night's gaming session then ended abruptly when my game crashed, just as I found an optional boss too. No idea where I'd gone to find them, so I called it a night. I will say this was the only performance issue that I had with the game, so I put it down to the PS5 struggling in extreme heat. The next day I started with a bit of exploration before heading for the 3rd soul. One thing you can gain from optional bosses in this game is an upgrade to your abilities. This boss in particular was a bit of a grind, but it did allow us to upgrade our spell and earn a trophy to boot. Remember Grunt? We saved him from the cage with our bomb ability. He's living his best life now by the coast and earned us a trophy in the process. Barb the Bard is looking for his next bit of motivation for his new song, and we're going to help him find it by climbing the mountain with him. That's the overarching story, chasing the final large soul for Death's Door. Now I will say that this is the first time in the game where I felt that the enemy types and attacks didn't really develop with the introduction of a new area. The music and environment was still pretty cool though. Like previous areas, there are unique puzzles to complete and progress through this area, most of which I won't show too much of to allow you to have some mystery when you play the game. Like previous areas, we needed to free 4 souls to unlock the door, and completed the final avarice and unlocked the hook shot, which is more of a traversal ability and unlocks a lot of previously unreachable areas of the game. Each soul you collect seems to add another of these little green guys to the hub world who like to follow you, I guess. So I saw an opportunity here to unlock a miscellaneous trophy called No Threat Detected for guiding one of these little guys through the metal detector. I then returned to the fortress to progress to areas previously unreachable now that we have the hook shot. Once we had explored all that we could, it was time to face the final boss for this area. On our way there, we discovered the camp of the Free Crows, ex-soul hunters who are just living their best life up in the mountains. We leave the Free Crows behind and continue along the watchtower to find the beast atop the mountain. This was another infuriating and arguably the most infuriating of all the spawn points. I found myself embarking on a trek with each death and actually skipping the battles en route as I felt like I'd done them so many times. When we did actually finally battle Betty the Beast, they also posed us a bit of an issue. We died many times here, but at least the walk back to the battle was a short one. I have cut out many of the deaths here because otherwise this video would be a decade long. Finally, we managed to beat Betty, and her roll attack can frankly do one. I rewarded myself with the trophy Big Spender for upgrading skills by 12 points in total, and we can now finally combine our 3 big souls to open Death's Door. However, I'm not going to show you what happens inside Death's Door as I feel like it's a big story scoop and a turning point in the direction of this game. Just go and play Death's Door. A more obvious enemy is the Keeper of the Doors, who was a doddle until wave 4, which saw him pound the ground and create these pink flame lines that I just couldn't resist rolling into. This final battle was a combination of every boss to date and included sections of the hardest traversal combinations we've seen all game. I decided that I needed to go and level up a little bit more following a 30-minute gaming session where I got my backside handed to me time and time again. On this evening in particular, I even rage quit as I genuinely felt like I was getting worse at the game the longer I played it. We returned the next day and first popped the trophy Specialist for maxing out a particular skill point. I decided to partake in a little collectible hunting, using some guides admittedly, and it was during this venture that I discovered these little tunnels. I had gone the whole game without realising you could jump into them. I honestly thought they were just an aesthetic. We then managed to tick off a handful of miscellaneous trophies. On our travels, we managed to upgrade our hook shot and in turn earned the trophy Crouching Tiger Hidden Crow. We discovered Pothead's secret garden and were rewarded with the trophy Plothead. We got the trophy Conga Line for doing, well, this. I also got to a point where I had every collectible I could acquire before returning to the final boss, so decided to turn my efforts to some upgrades. I chose to focus upgrades on my spell ability as the prolonged fire damage was like my go-to weapon. I then returned to an optional boss that had ruined a previous evening of mine and managed to beat him second time round and gain the trophy Hotshot. I then gained the bomb upgrade by defeating this optional boss on my first attempt. We are good at gaming, I promise. I beat a wave of enemies and found this shrine, which left us with only 2 more shrines to find. We revisited Barb the Bard, and frankly, if I need to read through this whole song, then so do you. At least we got a trophy for it. Good job. I then definitely didn't use a guide to find the Great Sword and in turn gained the Weapon Master trophy for finding all the weapons. It was time to re-find some courage and take on the Lord of the Doors again, following our levelling up of our abilities and our stats. It was a relentless battle that ended 25 minutes later, rewarding us with the trophy Crow Gamer for completing the main story. The Platinum trophy, however, was still some way off as we needed to finish our collectibles with the 2 that can only be acquired in the post-game. I went and picked up Jefferson for a late night stroll, met 3 owls, and defeated the Gravedigger, which honestly felt a little bit sad, but it was all needed for the 100% completion trophy. As was finding all the shrines, which acquired the trophy Zen, and our longest part of this platinum was making sure we had collected and planted all of the seeds, which finally acquired us the trophy Reap What You Sow. And in turn this allowed us to access the game's true ending and the trophy, a true ending. And then the trophy for 100% completion. Now surely this is where the platinum trophy pops up after we've 100%ed the game, no? Unfortunately this was not the case. Instead there was one remaining trophy that I alluded to earlier in this video. The Academy of Umbrellas trophy is for beating the game only using the umbrella as your melee weapon. Remember the one with the 0.5 times damage? Yeah, that weapon. So I started a new game, equipped myself the umbrella, and set out on this ridiculous mission. Now this is where the platinum journey took an absolute nosedive. New Game Plus, when it offers no game changes and multiple run-through trophies, are one of my least favourite types of trophies. The only ones worse, honestly, are multiplayer trophies, as they can literally ruin a platinum run for someone who's playing a game years after release. In this circumstance, you're forced to use the weapon equivalent of a feather duster. It isn't fun, it's not a satisfying challenge, and frankly, it just reminded me of parts of the game that didn't quite hit. However, I did persevere, I did get my platinum, but it left me with a sour taste in my mouth. If the platinum had popped after the 100% trophy, it would have been a highly recommended platinum journey. However, if you're not a trophy hunter, I would just enjoy the game to 100%. So there we have it, our time with Death's Door is over, but how would I rate this game on our review scale? As you can see on screen, the review scale goes from 1 out of 10 for an unplayable game up to 10 out of 10 for a masterpiece. We have also got our special 11 club, but more on that when we play a game that is worthy of joining it. We're going to be using this review scale for all games in our backlog, plus any new games that we might try, and any demos or previews I cover in the future. So as for Death's Door, where does it fall on our scale? Death's Door is a brilliant isometric adventure with solid combat, comedic storytelling, and an underlying moral that hits hard through its narrative. Some sections of the game are much better than others, with the final of the 3 souls being a little bit underwhelming. However, overall, I would say that Death's Door in 2025 is still a great game, and gets a very respectable 8 out of 10 from me. I'd also say I would recommend this game to a friend, especially if isometric games are ones that you enjoy. So that's the first game in our backlog series ticked off. Which game will we have the pleasure of tackling next? If you'd like to find out, please ensure you subscribe to the channel, and if you enjoyed this video, use the like button to show your appreciation. Let me know in the comments what you would rate Death's Door on our review scale, and any feedback from myself is very much appreciated. I will see you in the next one.